Hey everyone, welcome to the NES Archive, where we are taking a look at the North American NES library, one game at a time. Today's game was originally released for the Nintendo Entertainment System on October 18th, 1985. The game is Soccer. Soccer was part of the sports series of games, of course, and its tagline reads, "You've got to be fast on your feet to keep up with Nintendo Soccer." On the back of the box, it says, "Enjoy World Cup action as you move your team up and down the field to victory. Perform kickoffs, throw-ins, goal kicks, and corner kicks, just like a real soccer match. You can choose a computer team or a friend as an opponent, then select skill level from 1 to 5. You'll love Nintendo's state-of-the-art graphics and realistic gameplay, and of course the head-to-head competition that you'll control with just your fingertips. If you miss out on this exciting Nintendo game pack, you'll be kicking yourself." I think this is the first game in the NES Archive series that wasn't actually made directly by Nintendo. The developer was Iwasaki Electronics, but it was published by Nintendo. The design team consisted of Kuzo Ikuno, Hiroyuki Yukiyami, Koji Kondo, just to name a few. In addition to Soccer, they actually worked on games like Advance Wars Dual Strike, Metroid, Super Mario Maker for Nintendo 3DS, and Super Mario 64. I have to say, of all of the sports games from the launch of the NES, Soccer was the one that I feel like had the best visuals. I was really impressed by the celebration animations when you scored a goal, as well as the fact that cheerleaders came out at halftime. Adding in all that extra sprite work definitely made the game feel a lot more polished than games like baseball. Speaking of baseball, unlike the baseball game that was released as a launch game for the Nintendo, that one merely let you select like what seemed to be a random letter to represent your team. Soccer has actual countries, so you can set up your own matchups between US and Japan if you want, or perhaps Great Britain and France. The gameplay overall is fairly simple. In order to take possession of the ball, you just move your character near it, then they have possession, and the ball will stay with them until either someone steals it or until you pass it. You can dribble the ball in 8 directions, although I felt like when I was doing this, I feel like you move a lot faster if you're going up, down, left, or right. And if you try and went diagonal, I feel like you moved a lot slower. And because of that, I almost felt restricted to up, down, and left and right. Overall, the game plays pretty slow. B is to pass and A is to shoot. The game also allows you to select how long of a game you want to play, which is really good, especially back in the day when you couldn't just pause your game and save it. You had to finish the game or just shut it off, or if no one was looking, leave the Nintendo running and just shut off the TV, which your parents, if they found out about that and you were wasting that electricity, you were in big trouble. But if you only had 10 minutes to play, you could get a game in. And I played a game. It took me about 8 minutes to do the whole thing. Playing against the computer is okay, but it's always going to be more fun playing against another player. I will say this about the game. It has some decent background music while you're playing. The NES Archive game that I played before this was Tennis, which had no music at all in the background. And having the music in the soccer game definitely added something to the gameplay. Although I guess if you focused on the music, it would get repetitive. Most of the time, I just found like it was just background noise that I liked. The December 1988 issue of Computer and Video Games gave Soccer an 83%. They said the 5 different skill levels combined with the 7 teams of varied ability give plenty of long-term option, and the 2-player option, as ever, is brilliant. Nintendo Soccer is one of the best simulations of the sport and shouldn't be left on the subs bench. Overall, I tend to agree. I felt like Soccer was a pretty fun game. I was actually surprised. I'm not usually into sports games, and this is definitely one that I would have played more often than not. Now, I never had this when I was a kid because I just didn't have access to it. I can't imagine that the game was terribly popular in the United States, as soccer itself is not a super popular sport here in the US. Outside the US, I'm sure that it was on store shelves all over the place, but here in the States, it was probably pretty hard to find. Well, I've never really played many soccer games, and I remember playing FIFA 95 a little bit, but as an American that doesn't really pay attention to sports, a soccer game is probably at the bottom of my list of things to check out. That being said, I'm sure that there's lots of great soccer games out there, so I want to know, what are your favorite soccer games? Well, that's it for this episode of the NES Archive. I just took a look and I only have one launch game left, and that's going to be Super Mario Brothers. So that's going to be the next video that comes out in the series. This one was pretty short because there's not a lot to say about this game. My guess is that the video for Super Mario Brothers is probably going to be a pretty long one. It's going to take a lot of research, but I'm looking forward to doing it. As always, if you guys haven't checked out the rest of the NES Archive, make sure that you do, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.